Comes from CBS News. Governor Hochul and Mayor Mondani propose NYC PDA, or whatever that word is, tax on second homes worth over $500 million. The New York Governor Kathy Hochul and the New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani are proposing a tax on second homes on ultra wealthy who own posh property in New York City but are not residents. The surcharge would apply to all second homes valued above 500 million and is projected to bring in more than $500 million annually. Quote, "This is not a tax on residents," unquote. Hochul is holding firm to her pledge that not add to the tax burden of New York residents. That means no new income and corporate taxes, and she and the yeah, they didn't write that. They need a copy editor, and that she will not allow the mayor to raise property taxes. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, can still claim a victory, however, because rich people will still get hit in the pocketbook. They just don't. They just don't live here, and they can't vote him out of office. Quote, "It is not a tax on residents. That is so important. We're talking about people who are ultra wealthy. I mean, there are literally Russian oligarchs buying up properties, driving up the property value," unquote, Hochul said. At her announcement, Hochul surround herself with headlines accentuating multi-million-dollar home purchases by the so-called oligarchs, despite the Democratic socialists like Bernie Sanders and Mamdani to announce her plan for a PDA tax to help close the city's budget gap. I think there's a logic behind them also contributing to the city because they're here because this is a great city and it has so much to offer. Those come at a cost, and I think it's fair to ask them to contribute, Hochul said. How the paid pede tax works, Holchu said there's about 13,000 apartments of the ultra wealthy that could be taxed, like one at. I'm not gonna mention the person's name. I find that kind of gross. Paid pede tax will be an annual surcharge on 1 to 3 family homes, condos, and co-ops targeting non-residents. It would apply to homes that aren't primarily residences. The tax will ensure owners who don't live in the city or pay city income tax are still contributing to essential services, including policing and parks, Holchu's office said. Quote, the measure targets ultra wealthy out of city residents and global elites who use New York City real estate as a vehicle for wealth storage rather than as homes, unquote, a statement from Mamdani's office said. Um, Holchu still has to negotiate the so-called fine print with the legislator, like how much the surcharge will be and if there will be a sliding scale depending on how much the second home costs. Quote, if you can afford a $500 million second home that sits empty most of the year, you can afford to contribute like every other New Yorker, unquote, Solchul said in a statement. A spokesperson for the state assembly told CBS News New York paid a TD tax or whatever is something lawmakers have long supported. Mayor Mamdani on the idea. Mayor Mamdani said he's glad that property can be taxed. Quote, this is a kind of wealth that is being stored in the city, and it is a residence that is so often empty, unquote, Mamdani said. While the mayor didn't mention his ongoing demand to tax rich city residents, his fellow Democratic socialists took to social media to up the ante. Quote, we won't stop until oligarchs and the richest corporations pay everything they owe, unquote, New York City Democratic Socialist posted on social media. CBS News New York asked Hochul if the PDA tax is a way to appease the demands of Sanders and the Working Families Party to tax the rich. Quote, I feel no need to appease anyone, unquote, Hochul said. Has said taxing the rich is the only way to make up for the $5.3 billion budget gap. Thanks to the support of blah, blah, blah. Mamdani previously said personal income taxes on residents earning at least $1 million a year need to be increased. Holchu's $226 billion state budget proposal didn't include any broad-based income tax raises. She said it was designed to improve affordability without raising taxes. Republican gubernatorial candidate Blakeman speaks out. Bruce Blakeman, the Nassau Country executive running agents, whatever, slammed the idea. No tax hike promising. Okay. So basically, they're politicians going back and forth. Um, so actually, I'm kind of conflicted on this. So, but I'm gonna go through my notes first. I have economics defined as the study of scarce resources which have alternative uses. Land and high-end residential buildings in New York City are finite resources. When a tax is applied to these assets, it attempts to redirect the flow of capital and the use of that land. Now, I know they said that the second homes are nearly empty. That does not mean they're still not like paying rent. They're not paying their whatever. There's still something that's being paid. I can't imagine that you can buy a property and then do nothing with it. Do nothing with it. You buy a property in New York City and pay zero money towards it unless you stay there. So something's still being paid, and the government's still getting a tax out of that. They're trying to tax the non-residents who have, buildings there, which, like, I'm actually kind of back and forth. I'm not a socialist by any means. I think it's a stupid idea, but we'll get to that. We will get to that. However, this is a dumb idea to start with, mainly because the the problem is you eventually run out of. I've never seen a quote. The problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. If you're going to start taxing the second homes of people who don't live in New York City, they will just sell it and then take their business elsewhere. Because there's no need. If it's the value of the
Well,
home is going to be an extra burden, they would. I mean, granted, I don't have that much money, but again, if they're not living there, they probably only go there for meetings or whatever. So it's a
it sounded like in
luxury
the
for
article.
sure.
I was gonna say it
Continue.
sounded like in the article what it said, what the ostensible reason why they had these was so that way it was like a form of like wealth storage, right? So what you do is you go and you buy. So like this isn't really common in anywhere in many other places, but you still see it somewhat often in New York where you can buy an apartment, right? So you basically go, hey, this floor I am buying this floor of the building. I own this floor of the building or this set of rooms, right? As opposed to renting. And so what they would do is they would either buy buildings or they would buy rooms in buildings or floors of buildings, um, and then they would just hang on to them, right? Um, this is like the wealthy person version of like the old guy who doesn't want to give up his like random plot of land in like middle of nowhere, you know, like middle of nowhere
Montana.
Montana or something,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, well, I'm not giving this up. I bought this and I'm waiting for it to appreciate in value so I can cash out and blah blah. Right. What they're doing is they're instead of putting it in an investment account or a bank or something that's maybe or like the stock market, which could be volatile and suffer from stuff, you stick it into. She mentioned like Russian oligarchs. It will assume that what they're saying is true for the sake of argument. It seems like they're saying, hey, you don't just get to buy like or you can, but we don't like that you're choosing to buy an apartment complex or an apartment floor or an apartment uh, singular and not living here, not contributing, right? Your cash flow, you made a one-time payment and then you're paying like your annual taxes at the state, local, and whatever other level, right? But you're not buying food here, you're not working with businesses here, or like you're not living in this city, right? As a like high spending person, um, we want your money moving through the city, not one time purchase of a thing and then you're just gone. That's actually bad for us because that means that apartment is off the market. That means someone who might live here, right, even at a lower initial cost, they'd still be paying, you know, taxes. They might pay less in taxes, but your actual throughput, it's a much better throughput proposition. Um, this person is spending more money in the city. They're, taking public transit, or they're paying to take public transit, or they're, you know, paying to fill up a car with gas, or they're doing whatever else, as opposed to owning it so that way they can sell it to another wealthy person in like 6 years, and like to buy something, or to sell it to back to the apartment, or to sell, to whomstever at new market rate. They're profiting off of the fact that New York is a hot spot for economic activity, and then they're kind of shorting New York the city, by going. Well, I guess not shorting, but they're going. Actually, I think the city's going to do really well. So actually, I'm going to buy an apartment. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to want to be here because it's a great big economic center. So I'm going to buy an apartment. I don't want to live there. I just want to own an apartment there. So that way, in the future, when the price has gone up, up, and up by the factor of me buying this apartment, meaning that there are less apartments on the market, because I know people aren't going to build as many apartments, I think that the apartment market is going to go up. I'm investing in the apartment market by taking more off of the market. And then when I think the price has gone up high enough, I'll sell it back to the building, or when I need to cash out on stuff, I've got this I wouldn't say like semi-liquid, but I've got this consistent asset that I can just send back to the owner that I'm not actually putting any wear and tear on. I might have to do like vague maintenance, but it's cheaper than paying, a financial advisor. Or it's cheaper than, doing whatever. Or, I bought 2 floors at the Penn Street building, the really tall pencil one that's like all ultra luxury penthouses, that are each like $1 million each. So now I have two $1 million assets that I can, at my relative leisure, sell off to a buddy, or back to the building, or whatever. Um, and I don't have to deal with how expensive it is to, like, I could live in New York, and I could do all my stuff in New York, and I could do all this stuff, but I don't wanna. I just wanna, hedge their market. I just wanna make a profit off of the desirability of people living there without actually living there myself. And if you're the city of New York, you're going, hey buddy, that's kind of fucking up my tax throughput. I need people who own property here to either let other people use that property, right? So think building owner, right? If you're a building owner, you own buildings in New York and you live in Miami, that's not necessarily a huge uh, issue, so long as you're letting other people live in that building. If you're a building owner and you live in Miami and no one lives in your building, it's not an office building, it's just there to take up space because you know how expensive the space is. Yeah, we actually have a problem with that. You're fucking up our tax throughput. The key to economies, and the key to taxes especially, is throughput. That's why the middle class bears the majority of the tax burden, because they have the most economic throughput. The money moves the fastest through the middle class. And the New York City, it seems like, has gone, hey, you're becoming a throughput blocker, and we need to up our throughput. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say, if you don't live here, we're just going to start making you. We're going to estimate the amount of money we think we would have made off of, the people who could have lived in this situation, the throughput we would have gotten, and you're going to compensate us for that, because you're effectively taking that. We believe you're taking that from us, so we're going to make you be compensated for that. And as like, I don't think that this is going to be such a taxing policy that people en masse are just like, well, then where are all the rich people going to go? They're not going to leave the financial center of the world. Like, there's a reason they're buying space in New York. It's because it's so desirable. All they're saying is, listen, hey man, you want to profit off the city? You got to contribute to the city. You don't get to just make money off of a big project that we're all working on, and then not be a part of the project. And you can do that, right? You can make money off the project we're all working on if you let people live in that building or in that apartment, right? Although gets iffy with like subletting laws, because you probably don't want people en masse, rich or not, buying an apartment and then subletting that out, because that would discourage building owners from building new housing, obviously. So it seems like they're just saying, listen, man, you want to have an expensive apartment here? No problem. You just gotta live here. That's our only requirement. You just gotta live here. You want to be, big man, money bags, make money off the back of our hardworking New Yorkers, or the global financial hub. Listen, man, all we ask is that you live here. All we ask is that you spend money at our stores. All we ask is that you help contribute to the project. You help be a part of this. Not you're actually taking a chunk of it away because you know that because you know how valuable it is. That's what I think the goals of this new peer to tray, whatever it is, French nonsense.
I know, right?
Um, whatever the name of the tax is. I think that's the goal, is to go, if you want a piece of the pie, you got to help bake it.
Yeah, I get that. And like
Because I don't
again,
think, because hold on.
oh, you good, you
I
good.
think the thing that a lot of people are reading this as is like, oh, um, you can't be a building owner in New York without living in New York. And I don't think that's what's being said. I think what's being said is they're saying you can't buy an apartment here or buy a building here and then do nothing with it because you know how valuable the land it sits on is, or you know how valuable the space in the city is. And by denying people that space, you artificially increase the value of that space. You got to either live here, like you need to use it, like the residence it's supposed to be. Because I think this is mostly on like apartments. Like you either need to use it, or you need to compensate us for the throughput you're intentionally denying us, so that way you can make a profit. Because we don't want you like we think as a city, if people lived here, or if you let people live here, you would actually we would have a better throughput for the city and everyone would be better off, as opposed to, which, very socialist of them, as opposed to just you, Mr. Russian oligarch from overseas. That's what it seems like to me. That's what it seems like their goals are, is to just cut down on people who don't have a vested interest in the city, just looking to process off of it. It kind of seems like they're going, if you want a piece of the pie, you got to help us bake it.
Yeah, I get that, and that's the part where I'm like, I don't like Mamdani. I'm not a socialist, but to an extent, I can see it. I mean, because we talked like a month ago or like a month and a half ago, like one of the problems is that like people, millionaires or billionaires, they have a lot of money. Instead of putting it back into the system, they'll buy yachts, they'll buy
Mm-hmm.
9 fancy cars, and they wouldn't drive it. They'll just, because it retains the value for them.
Mm-hmm.
So to an extent, this is kind of what it seems like to me. That as you stated, they'll buy the homes because they know it's valuable, and it more or less retains the value, goes up in value, and because there's a scarcity, because it takes forever to build these places, value goes up, creates I don't want to say artificial scarcity, but with how slow it
I
takes,
mean, yeah, it
it
depends
takes,
on how you define artificial in the market,
yeah, I
but
was gonna say, I mean, it takes time for things to get built. you know, Demand same or higher, supply low, price goes up.
right.
So again, I'm not socialist by any means for sure, but I might even concede a little bit. I kind of get it. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I've got notes about problems with like taxing, rent control or taxing high end apartments because it decentivizes people to buy homes. It decentivizes people to, at least for rent control, decentivizes people to leave where they are because the rent is locked and wages do
Mm-hmm.
go up over time. Uh, but if wages are locked, you essentially have a place to live and you make more money. The Also because if there's rent control or places are taxed, people don't want to spend money on a building that they're not going to get as much money from. They can't pay people to renovate, construction, maintenance. That's what I'm going to think of. Maintenance people, because higher taxes. It decentivizes people to buy new buildings or buy construction companies to make new buildings that they can rent. But I hate to say it, and I'm sure I'm missing something, but I kind of get it. It's these essentially plots of land, we'll just say for lack of a better term,
Mm-hmm.
that aren't being used essentially. Um, as you stated,
Intentionally.
yeah, I would say maybe not intentionally, but it's like I don't think they're buying like, oh, I'm gonna buy it and I'm never gonna move there, but they'll buy it. They know it's got value, and they can always at least go to it. As you stated, New York's like the biggest like economic hub in the world, kind of thing. They'll buy it. Maybe they'll live there for a bit. maybe it's a vacation home, whatever, but they know it's got the value. And if you're, as you stated, it, if what's it called, one way to boost the economy, at least on a small, I say small scale, New York City, is people got to spend money there. They got to do stuff there. It's a quote unquote support local businesses kind of stuff, unquote. So I want to find fault. I really do. But that's my disdain for Mamdani and socialism in period. But I guess I have to concede on some points. I guess. Am I making sense? Like,
No, yeah. This just seems like it just seems like I understand where they're coming from, and honestly, as a solution to the problem, it doesn't seem like that bad of an idea. Um, and also, hey, listen, I'm pro America, all right? If what this does is removes, if this makes one of our crown jewels more accessible to our guys and less accessible to some Russian oligarch who thinks he can profit off of the productivity of hardworking Americans,
oh yeah,
hell yeah,
absolutely.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, so ah, all right. I gotta get a shot of bourbon. I'll give Mondani this one.
Every time his mom Donnie is right, take a shot.
Just, I imagine I won't be super drunk in the future. So I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, like, even if it was a like, as you stated, like, you don't think that the people who do own the places, they're not gonna just immediately sell it because, one, if you can afford a $5 million place in New York, you can probably pay a little bit more in taxes, for sure. We'll say that. But let's say if they do sell it, and they sell in mass, I know it's $5 million. I get that, but that increases supply when there's about the same amount of demand, theoretically. So that's more places for at least people in New York or people who want to move to New York. Granted, $5 million, you gotta be kind of wealthy to live in the places we're talking about, but it opens up theoretically, increasing supply with same amount of demand, price drops, but we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I don't but I mean, it's not a bad idea. We've complained about, we said it earlier, like 5-10 minutes ago. You know, you know, very wealthy people will just buy things that they don't need. To be fair to them, it's a store of value. You know what I mean? Like, with inflation and all that stuff, it's better to buy. I don't want to say, I don't want to justify it, but you buy a yacht to hold value. You buy fancy sports cars to hold value. You buy
Right. That's
extra
what we were
homes to hold
talking about
value.
earlier.
They do it to hold
You
value.
you siphon the wealth, and then you put it in things that have innate value to them, and then voila.
Yeah, you hold it all. So the gap between the haves and the have-nots just increases. So I don't want to talk about it anymore.
He's right now. Nah,
He's fuck genius. Why didn't I think?
Gee, why didn't I think of that?
But again, we'll see
He's
how
doing
it
it.
goes. And I guess the real test is, does it stop here? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I don't know how fast they'll run through the money. They did state it was gonna be like $500 million a year annually. That's if
Which,
that's if they keep it. You know what I mean? They keep their home,
yeah.
because if they, I don't think they will. You said you don't think they will. We don't think they'll. At least a majority of them will just put their plates on the market. But let's say they do, and then first home New York buyers buy the places. Well, that project's gone. It doesn't bring in that $500 million annually. Ha! Take that, Zoran. But you know what I mean. So again, we don't think they'll leave, but it's something we'll look at, see how well it does.
Yep.
So yeah, all right then. Well, that's all I got. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.